What do you think of Tim Walz? I told you a lot about him yesterday. I know we're all sort of getting to know him better. But Hula Steph with a $5 super
big shout out
chat for Albert as well, and a birthday greeting. I think the consensus is that it's a safe pick. And then after that, you begin to get into some of the political camps and the clear biases that come from those camps when it comes to evaluating Tim Walz. Albert, give us a setup piece on Walz and the big coming out party they had yesterday, and then I'll share with you a couple of instances of what I'm talking about.
After weeks of anticipation and speculation, this evening, Vice President Kamala Harris making her first appearance alongside her new running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
Welcome the next Vice President of the United States, Tim Walz.
The newly minted Democratic ticket making their debut at a rally in Philadelphia.
In his state, he has been a model chief executive, and with his experience, I'm telling you, Tim Walz will be ready on day one.
The one-time teacher, coach, and veteran addressing the crowd of thousands.
It was my students. They encouraged me to run for office. They saw in me what I was hoping to instill in them, a commitment of common good, a belief that one person can make a difference.
The news comes amid a razor-thin election. 538 polling averages show Harris up just over 1.5 points above Donald Trump. The Democratic Party hoping Walz can give Harris the edge needed to strengthen the ticket in Middle America and win the White House.
We got 91 days. My God, that's easy. We'll sleep when we're dead.
That electricity was palpable tonight in that crowd.
Pause for the facts. Classic.
And there's a spot that runs in the middle. That's because just we. But I think everybody talked about the electricity. Go ahead, Kim.
My favorite thing that he said was regarding reproductive health. And he said, and this isn't the golden rule, but he said, haven't you ever heard of the golden rule? Mind your own damn business. I thought that was really good.
I think Trevor's sending me that as a drop, too, that we might end up in the rotation. Does it continue, awesome. Albert, at all? Do you want to run a little bit more, or what do you think? No? Moving on. I found the reactions within the GOP to be interesting. And, of course, the reactions among the Democrats also not less interesting, I might say, in that they were supportive and I think excited, and probably sincerely so. I'm just saying it was somewhat predictable. What's your next piece of video? Albert's next piece of video would be this. This is Buttigieg in that spirit talking about Walz and the difference he can make to the campaign. And let me just say, I wouldn't run this if it were just, some hack thing said. I thought Buttigieg was particularly good here that I wanted you to hear. It's only about 90 seconds. Go ahead.
For the ticket.
I'm really excited. Like you said, she had so many great directions she could go in. She also has found an extraordinary partner who has brought that joy immediately to the campaign trail, and somebody who I think sets up this ticket and this campaign even more than was already true to be about all of us. That's the thing I'm really excited about. As you showed, he has such a compelling story, such an interesting biography, classroom teacher, many years in the military, football coach, and then a very effective member of Congress and governor. But one thing you notice right away about him is that it's not about him. I was thinking about what those different experiences have in common: being a teacher, being a coach, being a senior non-commissioned officer. And what they all have in common is they're all about cultivating and supporting other people. And you can tell that's what he's about. And that's what this ticket is about. I think it's one of the reasons why the Trump campaign can't figure out what to do with this ticket, even more so today than what's been true ever since she became the nominee. They cannot fathom a campaign or any leaders who are not about themselves. But this campaign, as impressive and compelling as the ticket themselves are, they've also made it clear that this campaign isn't about them. It's about you. It's about us. It's about the future of this country. And I think his personal qualities and his message really speak to that in a way that's going to continue that focus on the American people. That's how she's going to win this election.
So there, I think, is some truth to that. I think they do sort of have a populist message in a sense, and that message may land. Again, highly partisan country, highly divided, already in the respective camps are most people. But that said, some stuff can punch through, and some stuff can get people off the couch, or at least more disposed to perhaps vote for the Democrat in this case than to leave it blank, which is, I think, a category that a lot of people were falling into. When I say a lot, remember these elections, because of the Electoral College, decided by tens of thousands of votes. It's obscene, but that's the way America's presidential election is decided. Play me a little bit. Sorry?
I was going to say we have a kind of, I would say, a troll in the chat. But if this is the best that Republicans can do, the name calling.
Oh yeah, cackling Kamala and tampon Tim. Yeah,
Like,
I
if
mean,
that's your
right.
your fight. That's not enough.
Right.
That's not good enough. That's not an argument.
Well, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know what's good enough, just to be honest. But I know that that's getting old, and that's sort of the hack, put down the name stuff. That used to work for Trump, but doesn't seem as though people are sparking to it as much. But it works in a chat. Like if you jump into a chat and you just go, hey, tampon Tim and cackling, okay, then it works. You can, you can stir the pot that way. But honestly, I don't think, if you're talking about actually winning an election, that's certainly not a strategy. Play me a little bit of homeboy, what's his name? Frank Luntz. Frank Luntz is the GOP pollster, and he said something that really jumped out at me this morning. Give it a quick listen.
Here from the pollster Frank Luntz. And Frank, welcome to News.
He's talking here to Mary Poppins, everybody. It's very, quite extraordinary.
Give us a clue, will you? Why do you think she picked him?
He's a safe choice. If I was in her situation, I would have gone with the governor of Pennsylvania, because he definitely brings the state, and Pennsylvania is the largest of all the swing states that are out there. He would have provided more electoral votes. But let me emphasize, I do believe, and I understand the importance of what I'm about to say, that Vice President Harris is now the front runner in this race. I know that Trump people, their minds will explode, but Harris has got the intensity. She's got momentum. She's bringing people back into the political fold that had left when Joe Biden was going to be the candidate. That Donald Trump has made a series of misstatements, that his vice presidential choice has not done well. And Tim Walz is a good speaker, very presentable, knows the issues, and mirrors her point of view. I still would not have done that, because the goal right now is to win those states that matter the most, because we're not a simple national democracy. You have to win the Electoral College, as was shown in 2016. But the combination of her being a front runner and Walz being a good speaker, she's got the win at her back, and she hasn't even gone through the 4 days of the convention yet, which will be yet another bounce for her.
And Frank, can I just interrupt you to ask you, is that a hunch, or are you basing that on polling, the fact that she is, you believe, the front runner? It's the first time you're saying that, is it?
Yes, and there's so many polls that are now available, as well as our focus groups. And we did a session, I don't know if you're going to show it, but you have a focus group that we sent to you of voters who are not voting for Joe Biden, but are now voting for Kamala Harris. And they do so for two reasons. Number one, it was a vote against Biden about his age, and they thought that he couldn't do the job. But number two, they thought that Harris is exciting, energizing, compelling, and she's talking more about the stuff that she will do. And Donald Trump has fallen back into the old attacks and the old viciousness. This is Trump's election to lose, based on the public's belief that his administration has been better, or was better, than the Biden-Harris administration. But he's losing it with speeches that have the same sort of ad hominem attacks to a public that has had enough. and wants to look for something different, something new, something focused on the future.
So that was kind of what we were saying when we were talking about the troll. We were saying that, you know, you can go with the nickname stuff, but the reality is that all polling shows people are kind of over the nickname and the call and response thing that he does at his rallies and everybody. I mean, that show is getting a little old. We even showed you video of people leaving the Trump rallies early. His last week or so during which he's done rallies. Remember, this is his post-assassination attempt. You would think there'd be like a fervor about supporting him. But his meandering, his rambling, it's apparently getting old. I mean, I didn't think that those people could ever tire of anything Trump, but apparently some are. MAGA trying to swift-boat Tim Walz. They're accusing a 24-year lifer, a command sergeant major, of stolen valor because he retired from the U.S. Army to serve Americans for 12 years in Congress. Yeah, the stolen valor thing is about, I think, the rank at which he retired. We can discuss it more. Maybe even Mo Kelly, when he's here, wants to touch on it. But it is probably something of a non-starter. I would say the degree to which you hammer away and swift-boat the person who's bottom of the ticket is wasted time. You know, the amount of concentration you should spend on the person who's number 2 on the ticket really is implied in the fact that they're number 2 on the ticket. I wouldn't, you know, I'd use my resources and I'd use my media time to go for top of ticket. Now, strategically, you can go after him for progressive views. I discussed them yesterday. I don't understand how breakfast and lunch at school for kids is a progressive position. I don't understand how codifying Roe and women's reproductive rights is a progressive position. If you listen to faux news, he's the most liberal governor in the history of the United States and the universe and all the multiverses. Yeah, and that's the call, right? He's progressive. He's too progressive for America. And then you get into immigration and you get into trans rights and the questions around trans teens. And that is something in Minnesota you can have a reasonable conversation about. And it's funny, Kim actually raised my consciousness and awareness. I don't even think I noted it to her on the air, but because of her backing of the California policy when it comes to trans kids, it made me look at this trans issue in a different way because Minnesota has a similar one, kind of a parallel policy, don't they, Kim?
I'm not sure what Minnesota's policies are, but I know in California now, in most school districts, if not all, that if a child identifies as a different name or by a different pronoun at school, that you don't notify the parents, correct?
Right. That's exactly right. And I mean, you can have a conversation about that, but you were saying to me, you think that's important.
I do think it's important. I think that you would ask me if it was my child, would I want to know? And my answer was and remains the same, that I would hope I have a good enough relationship with my child that they feel comfortable coming to me first and talking it through. But if they don't, and if a child doesn't have that relationship with their parent, they need to have a safe space to be able to be themselves, to try on different hats, to figure out who they are. And when they don't have that outlet, it becomes dangerous. So it would be, in this case, my fault for not having open lines of communication with my child, not the school district's fault. They're making a safe place for my kid. Yeah.
The House of Representatives in Minnesota passed a bill by a 68-62 vote. It was in 2023 that would prevent state courts or officials from complying with child removal requests or extraditions or arrests or subpoenas that are related to gender-affirming health care that a person gets in Minnesota. So on the other side of it, there are 8 states that have all-out bans on gender-affirming care for transgender youth, including any medications or surgical services. I mean, it's a total ban. So if you get into Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Iowa, Mississippi, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Utah, they've all issued all-out bans on any kind of support for transgender youth. So it's a sensitive subject, and I guess I mention it because of everything that's going on. To me, he's not progressive particularly at all, except, I guess, if you get to the trans thing. I don't even think there's anything controversial about the breakfast and lunch at school, codifying Roe. These are, this should be boilerplate stuff, but
Basic.
I can see that these are hot button issues related to trans and related to immigration. The notion that you can essentially set up policies in your state that offer services to those who've immigrated there. The idea is somehow that it encourages illegal immigration. Again, I think you can take a meeting on that. Oftentimes these services are offered so you don't end up with an underclass perpetuating crime and other things that they have to get into because there's no way they can legitimately get employment, and then there is no way they can legitimately seek shelter. In other words, the world of someone who has got into the country illegally is fraught with all kinds of issues that do spill over onto those of us who live here legally. So those are the only two things that I can find in Walz's history that can be at all hot button issues. Otherwise, I see him as somewhat mainstream when it comes to things that poll incredibly well. Even the gun thing, he's got the gun rights thing that he put in there so that there is a regulation on gun ownership in Minnesota. That's agreed with by over 70% of Americans. So this isn't a guy who's wildly progressive or liberal. I'd say he's pretty much walking in step. I don't mean to dry clean his record. I mean, you may feel that his position on trans youth and his position on immigration and benefits to immigrants who are people who are here illegally, you may feel that's a deal buster. Okay, but I'm suggesting to you of his positions, those are the two that really jump out at me. And apart from that, it seems to me like it's another day at the office in America, and his positions are far more consistent with those of average Americans than are the positions of, for example, the right wing. The GOP that overturned Roe, they are far more flying in the face of what people want in terms of freedom and liberties in this country than Tim Walz or Kamala Harris.
Because we know that the majority of Americans want reproductive freedom, and we know that the majority of Americans want common sense gun laws.
The talk, he's a solid pick, says Kay Plant. I wish it was Kelly, but so be it. It's Walz. Yeah, it's interesting to me. There was a whisper campaign. This is the kind of thing that makes you just infuriated. There was a whisper campaign on the part of the GOP to run down Shapiro so that Democrats might go for Walz. This is at least according to reporting I was reading this morning. And the way the whisper campaign worked, in essence, is that they played Shapiro up as though he was a big supporter of Israel. And they did that in conjunction with not the Republicans, but of course the progressive left. So the whisper campaign aligned itself with that extreme wing of the Democratic Party, and they tried to dirty up Josh Shapiro and create a sort of controversy around him because Republicans didn't want to face Josh Shapiro. This is the reporting. I mean, you can agree with it or disagree, but it did happen. So I mentioned to you yesterday that, Josh Shapiro has a very tough position on Israel. It may be tougher than anybody else on the ticket. He's spoken out intensely and passionately and emotionally against Benjamin Netanyahu. And he has, it's interesting to me, spoken out against Israeli policy. He's been very forward about that. But he is Jewish, and there is, sadly, in my judgment, a strain of, you can call it anti-Semitism, an uncomfortableness with a Jewish person on the ticket. I'd suggest that was reflected in their choice. Again, I'm not saying they're anti-Semitic. I'm not saying Kamala Harris is. I'm not saying the people who are on the committee. I'm saying they're evaluating the degree to which Americans in general may be anti-Semitic or racist or anti-gay, or you get the point. So they have to, as I was mentioning to you yesterday, they cast this in a way. If you think of it as a casting, he's got to measure up in so many different ways, philosophically, from a temperament standpoint, and then you have these other wild cards like religion. It's insane. But this is the country where that stuff really lands in a very big way.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.